Mine should be on.
And the light on means it's on.
All right, we good? All right, then I will go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. If I can have everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, on to open forum. Don't have anybody here for the open forum, so we'll go ahead and move on to approval of tonight's agenda. Everybody had a chance to take a look. Any amendments or changes? Nope.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Pat to approve.
Second.
Second by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
On to the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions on that?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve by Dan.
Second.
Second by Troy. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. See, pretty quick. Right up to Janelle.
I guess, holy cow. All right, I'm here with your city contract update for the city prosecutions that we do for the Stearns County portion of Eden Valley anyway. As you can see on this front page where we first talk about diversion, as we'll talk about, juvenile crime dropped right through the floor. It had started to drop before COVID and it dropped even further when the schools quit calling the cops. So we've got very few first-time offenders that are coming through the court system at all, and that's who went through diversion. Same thing with adults. The adult numbers stay kind of right steady, but those are usually your first-time shoplifters, things like that. That continued. But the kids just flat out aren't coming into the system. So we will still now be going ahead with doing that. If you have community service projects that you need, sometimes kids from another town would rather go to a town where nobody knows them to do their community service. So even though you didn't happen to have anybody from Eden Valley this last year, doesn't mean we can't do so. If you've got a little project that some people could help you with, please let us know. Call either me or Barb, it's on there. When we go to the red and blue one, those are the things that you had in the city of Eden Valley this year. You actually had four. You guys usually have one or two, and you actually had four this year, but two of them are related to your felony. We've got one domestic abuse offender who has an active warrant for him right now, and he committed two of those crimes as well as the only felony that happened in the Stearns County portion this year. So that was very consistent. So when you go to the last page, that shows overall what's going on. It's second to last page. The colorful green ones are the felonies, and the blue are the misdemeanor. Again, you just had the one felony this year, and that was a domestic violence case that's been spent a lot of time paying close attention to that and what's going on with that particular offender. The other two are just kind of your garden variety traffic things that you're going to have, so that's not surprising. So as you go to the last page, then that's what's happening in the rest of the county. You are one of the 1,300 or so felonies that we had last year. Unfortunately, violent crime went up across the country, across the state, but certainly in Stearns County, as you can see down on the bottom there, we had 8 homicides each of the last 2 years. We're usually averaging, 1 or 2 a year. And last year, the last 2 years, and that's been people who know each other and are fighting about stuff generally. Haven't had any stranger things. Thankfully, the one carjacking that we've had so far did not involve anybody getting shot, so that was good. But as you can see, the person crimes are at an all-time high. Between domestic violence, sexual assaults, armed robberies, just violence generally, as we're seeing around the country and around the state, St. Cloud being no different. Property and drug crimes were down a little bit, but part of that I think was COVID related. Part of it was the stores maybe not always calling. If they'd catch somebody, they'd take their stuff back and send them on their way. I'm not sure that they even got involved with the cops there again during these last couple of years. But the weapons crimes, these are just the felonies. When you look at the felonies and the gross misdemeanors, they tripled last year. Gun crimes tripled in Stearns County. And those are not people who have permits to carry. That's just generally malarkey. And if they use the weapon on somebody, then they're over in the person crime category. So these are the ones who are just committing gun offenses, but those did triple. We do have a very high per capita permit to carry, and even the legal questions that came through those, because I only see the legal questions, the sheriff handles all of those. but they also tripled last year. So the people who are illegally carrying guns also went up quite a bit in the county, and we understand that we might see some activity from some of that at some point. Traffic crimes were also running from the cops during COVID when hardly anyone was on the roads. The people who were on the roads were absolutely nuts. The amount of high-speed chases that we had involving multiple agencies. It's not like we're not gonna find you. We might let you go rather than chase you through town so you don't kill somebody, but it's not like we don't know what your car is and we don't have drones and helicopters and stuff. So we caught all those people. We just, the roads were an interesting place to be there for a couple of years. So overall, what you're seeing there in adult crime, as you can see, is going up. But then when you go over to child protection and juvenile crime, juvenile delinquencies is said right through the floor. Part of it was an intentional change in District 742 in St. Cloud, obviously the largest school district we deal with. There was a strong movement to, when kids were first getting into trouble, rather than sending them to the cops, the schools dealing with it and trying not to get these kids to identify themselves as criminals. If they see themselves as criminals by the time they're 11, 12, and that's the way that they're getting treated, it's not an awesome way to start. So they literally stopped calling the cops, and they're dealing with more things internally, and we'll see how that goes in the long run. But it was an intentional decision on the part of 742 that they were just going to handle it differently with their school resource officers. And on the child protection numbers, those went down, we believe, because again, the kids weren't in school, they weren't out at their usual events, they didn't have access to the mandated reporters. So the people who would normally be letting us know what was going on weren't necessarily doing that. And also an intentional move on our part to move some of those kids who would have been the low-level delinquencies over into child protection so that we can figure out what's going on at home. Not surprisingly, most of the kids that we see in the delinquency system, home probably isn't awesome, and that might be why things are going like they're going. So we've also intentionally tried to shift it that way to the extent we can. Because if we've got them identified and heavily committing crimes by the time they're 14, 15, it's gonna be real tough to change that trajectory at that point. So we've just had to push it further back up the stream and see if we can intervene on that, because there's so much adult crime. We set a record in the amount of trials that we did last year. Our juries came. When I talked to my colleagues around the state, they would call a jury, and in some places, not enough people would show up to even have a trial. Wow, people came here. They came the whole time, and we actually built a new courtroom in the basement of our building where you go to renew your tabs downtown. That most of the people in that building had just moved out to the service center. They doubled the size of the West End Service Center right before COVID. So they had moved out, and they hadn't done the remodeling, and no one had moved back in. So we built a courtroom in the basement. That's why we were afraid we were going to get one of the Chauvin trials, because we had this brand new, completely securable below ground courtroom. So that was why we were talked about for having that. Thank goodness we didn't have to experience that. But we now have that extra courtroom, and it's socially distanced, and it's big, and it's something that we can use going forward. It'll probably become more of a public meeting space, frankly, because we've got the courthouses back now. But it's been an interesting time to work in criminal justice. We actually got to basically shut the justice system down and restart it, and we're better at it now. We're doing it just like you guys are. I mean, most of court, if it's not a trial and a contested hearing, it's by Zoom. And we're getting a lot more people to show up for court. We have a lot more victims who are willing to participate. It's just really sped things up significantly. And some of those backlog of cases that we had, you know, if you caused trouble right before COVID and we haven't seen you since, well, let's recognize that we haven't seen you since. Let's get your conviction and move those cases along. And we're in the process of doing that right now. We've done entire weeks where we'll have as many as 150 cases set in 2 days, just to move them through. So we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to be caught up. But part of that, like I say, is because the juries continue to come. And when the criminals know that the juries are really going to come, then they take responsibility for what they did, and we just have less people asking for trials. So that how the people respond really does matter in how your criminal justice system is going to work. And we were one of the ones in the state that just kept going and kept getting it done. So we appreciate that. I want you guys to know the county board's taking care of us. I hope they're taking care of you. They're working on broadband right now, is their big thing that they're working on with all the ARP money. So I don't know if the cities have been involved in that as well, but the townships certainly have been. We've been doing a lot of legal work on that as well. Questions?
Well, covered it really well.
Okay. All right, well, you guys are my second to last one. I've been out on 11. So I kind of got it down now.
There you go.
And I just go ahead and answer the questions that the other one asked me, so. You get the package deal. All right, well, we will hopefully see you next year then. And if you have any questions in the meantime, let's talk at your squad car. I talked to Brandy on something else. We talk to each other fairly often, so she's kind of one of my closest neighbors. And I'm kind of I'm at the senior end of the County Attorneys Association now. Most of the new county attorneys are women under 40. All across the state. When Brandy first came in and I met her, she's now on the board of the County Attorneys Association. She took my spot. We needed people that were getting into it in earlier time and still in there trying the homicides on that board. So she actually took my spot. And your squad car should be, hopefully, just waiting for the BCA to finish the investigation. They have a lot, and then they had another officer involved today. So every time they get another one, it slows them down. But they're aware that you guys need your car back. Apparently the Meeker County Sheriff gave you one. We said, well, maybe Stearns can kick in now for a few more months here if that's what needs to happen. But hopefully that'll be taken care of pretty soon. I know that she's working on that. And those are gargantuan tasks, you guys. They are gargantuan. The amount of information that they give us on those is now substantially more than it used to be. And you got to look at all of it before you can get it done. But I think that'll be resolved pretty soon. All right.
Thanks for coming.
Get out of here. You want to hear your audit, right? All right.
Hey. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Give you a moment to get set up.
It all pulled up for you there, huh? What? I think it pulled up nicely there.
It did.
Kind of just scroll through it. All right. Well, good evening. I'm Caroline Stutzman. I'm the manager involved in the audit for City of Eden Valley. So I'd like to take a few minutes of your time and go through the results of the audit for 2021. So the main reason that you ask us to work with you is to provide an opinion on your financial statements. That opinion is housed within the independent auditor's report. Also within the independent auditor's report is management's responsibility as well as our responsibility is outlined. Management's responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with the reporting requirements. Really what that's getting at is the numbers need to be determined by management. We aren't able to do that and audit them. A line has to be drawn in the sand. And then our responsibility then is to provide an opinion on those financial statements based on the audit that we conduct. The opinion we're providing is what's called an unmodified opinion. Kind of two stages of that. One for the city as a whole, based on the regulatory basis of accounting, which is what the Office of the State Auditor allows for cities of your size. That means that's the highest level that you can receive, a clean opinion, if you will. And then there is a secondary report that is prepared for your enterprise funds on the accrual basis, unmodified opinion in regards to that as well. That additional report is because of the debt funding, PFA funding that you get, there are requirements in regards to that. So yes, meaning we believe the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of December 31st. A couple of additional components outside of just the opinion based or for the numbers. We conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That requires us to consider internal controls as we go throughout our process. So one item there, lack of segregation of accounting duties, is inherently present with the amount of staff that you have and the duties that overlap as a result of that. Very common for cities of your size to have that. I know it's analyzed and you look at it and attempt to segregate where possible. That's really all that we're asking. We're not asking you to change it beyond that. Just an awareness item. One final component is the report in accordance with Minnesota legal compliance. So the Office of the State Auditor puts together some checklists for us filled with Minnesota state statutes that we have to ask them questions about. There were no findings in relation to any of that either. So after all of that, we can dig into the results of the audit. So here we have that kind of the high summary, total receipts, total disbursements, and cash fund balance for the general fund. Receipts and disbursements were both up a bit. We'll look into the detail of that in the next couple of slides. But in the end, cash fund balance did increase for the year, just under $200,000. and ended the year at just over 1.2 million. The unassigned fund balance component represents approximately 12 months of disbursements. Your fund balance policy indicates that you would strive to maintain a minimum of 6 months, so you are in compliance with the policy you've set for yourselves. And then here we have a little bit more detail on the general fund receipts. In total, receipts increased about a little bit under 20%. The majority of that happening in the intergovernmental revenue category. That is a result of the loan apartment program, the flow through of that. So you're going to see that here on the receipt side, and you're going to see it on the next slide when we look at disbursements as well. That was just an in and an out through you. So here's where you see that in the general government category, that is higher. That's the flow through of that. The flip side of that, or the other change I should say, occurring here is in public safety, which decreased. Last year, there were the additional funds and additional spending for the coronavirus or CRF funds, so it was the flow through of that, as well as some squad car upgrades. But in total, disbursements increased about 11% for the year. The next slide here is a budget to actual snapshot. So the very first column there is the original budget that was approved. Called for an increase in fund balance, fairly break-even increase of about 11,000. After some adjustments, you see the final budget there in the second column. Still anticipating a small increase in fund balance there. And then actual results are in the third column, showing that increase of just under 200,000. We can look to the fourth column there, the variance, for some explanations. If we look at total receipts and follow that all the way over to the far right, in the variance column, we see that receipts were over budget about 67,000. If we apply a percentage to that, it's about 5.2%. The majority of the reasons for that have to do with conservative budgeting. So those are items that can fluctuate from year to year based on activity. That's fairly common to see that. And following the chart down to total disbursements and all the way over, seeing that disbursements were under budget, nearly 80,000. That's a percentage of 6.5%. And we shift gears a bit and look at your enterprise funds, starting with your water fund. Operating revenues were up for the year. There was an increase in usage as well as additional fees per unit at the apartments. And then operating expenses were down, but really pretty consistent. I think it changed only about 1%, so pretty consistent there. Looking at the chart, the orange and the red bars are some bars that we like to look at in comparison. It's a way to analyze if the charges for services in the fund are sufficient to cover all of your operating expenses, including your depreciation expense. So we have one bar with it in, one bar without, and you are above the line for both, indicating you are covering all of that depreciation expense, helping to set dollars aside for future replacement of those assets. An additional way to look at enterprise funds is from an equity standpoint, so your net position. And your net position has two components, one that's tied up in your capital assets, it's the investment in capital assets, not available for spending because it's tied up in your assets. The other component is what's called unrestricted net position, that is what's available for future operations. That component increased about 230,000 for the year, so moving in the right direction in that regard as well. One thing I didn't mention, and you don't have to go back to it, but outside of, or what's not included in the operating expenses up here would be your debt payments. So just a item of note there that, you know, the orange and the red bars being above the line, that those do contribute to those debt payments, which you do have significant obligations in those. So it's not that there's, you know, tons of money sitting around for it. It does go to other things, which is that debt obligation that the city has in both the water and the sewer fund. So just wanted to mention that as well. We can move on to the sewer fund. Thank you. Similar presentation here. Operating revenues up here as well with the same reasons, increased usage as well as those apartment fees. And then operating expenses up slightly, about 13%, mostly professional services or engineering costs related to that. And similar story here, orange and red bar are both above the line for the past 4 years that we're seeing there. Really, like, yep, just a sliver there for 2021, but nonetheless above the line, so fully covering that depreciation expense again, as we mentioned. Also remembering that this fund has even more debt probably than the water fund, so it does go to cover that. In the end, though, the unrestricted net position, again, that future look, or what's available for future operations, increased 66,000. So I like to include both of those because this tells one piece of the story, but then the debt falls below that. So to show that that unrestricted is still increasing helps you to see kind of the full picture, that it's all moving in the right direction. That's what I'd prepared to go through with you. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on any of this or anything else in the information you received.
We're above water.
Yes.
$1,400.
You know, compared to other cities, you know, when it comes to like how much we've gotten to reserves and that, is that typical to have 12 months worth of reserves, or?
It really can fluctuate, for one, based on sizes of cities. For a city of your size, I see that fairly frequently, yes, because of the fluctuations of, you know, emergencies or things that could happen. It's reasonable to have that size of balance for you, just because of the cash balance that you have as well. Yeah, it all correlates, and it's fairly common to see that amount, I would say.
Do we have too much in reserve? Is it something that we should be paying off with that reserve we have? I know we always want to keep at least 6 months, I know that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a philosophy you can do. I can't tell you yes or no on that. You've got your policy you've established, and you definitely strive for that and have exceeded it. So from that standpoint, I'd leave it to you as to how you would want to approach that. But as I said, it is common to sometimes see that year worth of, it's not uncommon, is how I would say that, to see that amount in there. So things do come up, definitely emergencies and things like, you know, unknown items. So it's not uncommon or not a bad habit to have some extra sitting in there for you.
Any other questions? No? Thank you. Covered it really well for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and all of the work that goes into getting to this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night. You too.
With that in mind, then we're up to comprehensive plan, recommendation to hire. So so a few of us, myself, Steve Schmidt, president of EDA, Darren, planning and zoning, we sat down and we interviewed a few comprehensive planners, and we came up with going with Mid-Minnesota Development Corporation to help us do that comprehensive plan for the city. We also interviewed Bolton Mank and an individual person that does strategic plans as part of her business. We liked MMDC for a couple of reasons. One reason is that, you know, in interviewing with Bolton Mank, it was like, okay, do we want to have the same house that does our engineering doing our comprehensive plan, or have that separate? We decided that, you know, having a separate place doing the comprehensive plan would be beneficial for us. They're really, the other thing too would be Minnesota was very eager and wanting to work with us. And then the price wasn't too bad either. So. Did I cover everything, or did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. No. I'm looking for your guys's.
I think getting a fresh set of eyes in here rather than going with the same engineering firm is good. A good idea. So.
Well, it's nice to have a third-party objective view at it. What kind of dollar amount we're looking at?
Oh, what was it again?
And where are they out of?
They're Wilmer, yeah.
Okay,
So they're, they haven't done, you know, they do other things too, like along the lines of like, you know, like community development and business development. And so this has been a part of their business that they're building up again, and they haven't done much in this area of their region. So they're looking to get out, you know, do more stuff out here, where instead of like around that Wilmer and Marshall area.
What's the timeline for,
Well-
if we do go with them?
If we move forward, and if we move forward today, you know, and make a decision to move forward today, we would like to have them hit the ground running. What they'll do is for the community input aspects, they want to do, you know, actually reach out to the community. So they want to be around, like for Valley Days. They want to have a stand, or they want to be out where they can interview people in the community, talk to people in the community. They also want to get a, what would they call it, a planning commission, or no, a steering committee put together, which could be people, which ideally would be a few business people, you know, a few business members of the community, a few residents of the community, you know, other interested parties to help kind of steer and guide, you know, the process. That would be something that we want to get going right away. I think the overall timeline would be a year, would they say? It was a year, maybe a little shorter, depending on, it all depends on like how much input they get, how much the feedback, how much community involvement they get. If they get a lot of it, they can get done sooner. If they gotta do multiple passes to get, or they're struggling to get input from a certain area, might be that 12-month range.
Are they planning, do you think they'll have like open houses where they'll invite people to come in and?
Yeah. They'll do open houses, invite people in, reach out to people directly, and you know, try to get as much feedback from the community as possible. Yeah. So we'll be asking the EDA on Monday, you know, for footing part of the bill, and then you know, this council will foot the other part. So part of it will come out of their funds, part of it will come out of ours.
I'm for it. I think it'd be a good idea.
All right, would you,
Something we've been talking about for quite a while.
somebody like to make a motion for it, or?
Make a motion, we move forward with, what is the name?
MMDC.
MMDC, for a comprehensive plan.
All right, I have a motion by Dan to approve, or Pat to approve. I was looking at you when I was talking.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a second by Dan. Not that I was guilting you to do the second. All in favor? Aye.
Sure sounded like it.
Yeah, well, you
I
know,
did.
psychological. All right, on to Valley Days, Parade Road closures and detours.
In front of you.
Looks like we're back to the old map.
Reviewed by Public Works Director and signed off by our police chief. And they're back to the old.
Actually, I'm gonna kind of like having that route that we had.
The short route?
Huh?
The short route?
The short route, yeah.
I think a lot of people really like the route. It was, up by the church was a nightmare, so.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise we could flatten that road out and take that out of it, they love that road. Because downtown, of course, they've got a lot of people downtown. So, but maybe they still won't get. Nice knee jerk.
Zach, you don't have any issues, any?
No, it's well, back to normal.
Back to normal. All right,
I make a motion to approve the parade route for Valley Days.
a motion by Dan to approve. I'll go ahead. I'll take the second on that. All in favor? Aye. All right. And that takes us to other. Anybody have anything to share?
We've been talking a lot about houses and stuff that need to be upgraded or finished and stuff like that. Where is that whole thing? I'm getting a few phone calls on, especially the one down in Coleman.
Yes.
I saw that they were,
Think
I saw that they
we
were
all
actually hauling in sheet rock, over the weekend.
Is it all piled outside yet?
It was piled outside, and then with Sunday, they hauled it all in.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Sunday, we walked through there.
It's funny you bring that up because me and Cindy had that same conversation, and something that I floated by her would be is now that that house is, you know, I'll say quote unquote is achieved its site permit or completed its site permit, wouldn't that fall under our normal general nuisance laws or ordinances?
At the rate of only working on it Saturday half a day and maybe Sunday, it ain't never gonna get done.
I'm thinking more along the lines that everybody else in town has to have their houses and their properties at a certain level. Can we not, now that they're outside of their site permit, that same rule applies?
Building is done.
Mhm.
Now it's a matter of getting them to complete it. Do the siding and all that stuff, yeah.
At least get the outside done.
But you guys know where I'm going with
Oh, I
that,
know.
right? You know, cause I gotta make sure I got windows in my house and siding on and shingles and, you know, a decent yard and.
Yeah, a lot of people that move stuff into town or build stuff in town don't realize that it goes a long way with us. If it looks decent outside, we don't necessarily care what it looks like inside.
You gotta live there, not me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
I
just
mean,
the outside.
We do and we don't, you know, because we want it to be safe inside, but, you know, if it's if it's decent outside, then that kind of takes the pressure off inside.
Well, kind of just chaps because they wanted to move it in quick. You know,
They wanted
so
to
we
get
it
in before
done,
yeah.
And it's just been stalled. And I don't know, have you talked to them about their erosion control? Yeah, they gotta get that up. Plugging up your storm. I mean, if we're pushing other people to keep the road clean. Cause you can push that one because it's going in the creek.
Yeah, my understanding is that was.
We can send all we want and there's no,
But we
no
gotta do
teeth behind it.
something. Right, we gotta,
Well, that's
well-
not true. If we need the roads cleaned up, we have a public works department.
No,
to go
but-
clean the road, and we build it, and that's our
But-
only take on
Yeah.
that.
the problem is though, it is our problem because for, I don't know how long how many years I've been on here. Started with that one. How many did we start with? And we're always gonna do something and nothing gets done. Same with the blight houses. We got how much money tied up in this stuff and what have we accomplished?
Right.
I
That's
can tell you
different
that.
discussion than what you just gave us.
But it falls in the
Yeah.
same category. We're talking, but we're not doing nothing.
Absolutely.
So that's where that needs to, we gotta quit talking and doing. I guess that's kinda where I'm at with it.
Well, as long as we're willing as council to follow it all the way through.
But that's the problem, so I don't know what happened with, the place beside you, you know, went to the attorney, all this stuff, and then what happened? Where did it go? I mean, what happened?
One next year also.
And the one over here, I mean, we did all this legwork and all of a sudden it just went away.
Just disappeared.
Actually, one down here next to my property.
Yeah,
One
that's,
next to my house.
Yeah.
And there's,
So, I
there's
mean-
more of them too, but.
Yeah, and it keeps coming. I mean, I'm to the point where I don't wanna see one moved in this town. We're not gaining anything. We don't have any teeth in anything. I mean, it's, and as far as these site permits, they can go away. We can't even frickin' get property, corners marked out. And that's part of a site permit. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're going about this so wrong. I'm just kinda over it, and I wanna get something done. We're going through this comp plan, we're trying to achieve things, we need to get this done. We can go after Doug in a month, but we can't fix this that's been going on for years, I guess is where I'm kinda at. And I just don't, now it's in my neighborhood, and I'll be honest, I don't want it. I don't want it in town, period, but it's getting old. We got a lot of money tied up and stuff, that just is nothing. You know what I mean?
So what's your recommendation?
Which part?
Any of it?
Not moving any more houses in. I would go to a building code. Actually get an inspector in. In our ordinance, we do have, you need to find your property corners. That's a major, we can't keep doing this. I mean, there's nothing straight in this town. But I'd say we gotta go back. The fines have to be something substantial, cause we told them October, right? 15th and nothing. If we gotta go through this whole thing, get these blight houses, cause I don't know where it stopped or what's it just went away. And we had the ball rolling, but then it kinda just fizzled out.
So I don't know. I don't know where that lands. Is that land planning zone? Where does that, ultimately, we make the decisions. But,
Didn't think
to be honest, I haven't had good luck with a house moved in. I mean, new ones are different. But what we got in town, you might as well leave them on the farm. I'll be honest. It's not helping us.
In the discussion you had, I contacted some different, and I'm sure we'll do this, I don't have a workshop, it's here too, but I did contact the building official and said, okay, this is what's happened. So if we had the building code and a building official, meaning a licensed building, what would be different? Someone comes in and applies and they want, the first thing they say is they do an inspection of the home. So if they're buying a home and they're bringing it in from Little Falls, they go to Little Falls and inspect the home. So that's the first thing, and they have to meet whatever requirements are set by the city. Now, not like this, I don't know, whatever you said. So that would be a difference in having a building official. In the end, if you said, no, it's okay, you can still move that in and set it there. A building official said they would be the one who would correct the attorney, because a licensed building.
It's still up to the council to set the guidelines for the building inspector, like how long they have to finish it, and all that stuff, which.
I mean, we did. But when it goes past it, there's no
There's
ramification.
no teeth in it.
That's what I was gonna ask, if you go to that, what happens when they don't hold the bargain again, they don't have it done?
Well, that's where we gotta have something, and that's hurting a little bit more than, I mean, I like where Brent's going with that one with, let's flop it over because the site permit's over and go that route. But something has to change. I mean,
Do you think that moving to a building code will fix some of these issues?
I think it'll fix a lot of stuff. Will it be perfect? No, nothing's ever perfect. It's a gray area. I mean, I understand that.
Is
but
it gonna cause problems other places?
Is the cure
Just
gonna
to
be
fix it.
worse than the disease?
That's, yeah.
No, because we don't, when I look at a site permit, I laugh at it, it's a joke. I'll be honest. Other towns have building inspectors, building codes, and I don't know. I mean,
They're not building here because, they're not
They're
building here because we don't have a building code.
Right.
Watkins has a building code, they're building like crazy, they're building around. So they're not avoiding here because of the cost of building.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I just think at the end, you get a better product, by far.
But I go back and still say, we have to sit here and put some teeth into it. What is a building code and building inspector can be enforced what we tell them to a certain point. There's state guidelines that gotta go by, but the penalties for it is up to the council. Correct?
So why don't we come up with stiffer penalties if they don't?
Typically, the attorney has said, your penalties are fine, it's the beginning cost that's not. If a judge will uphold doubling a building permit. So in that city, their building permit started at 3,000, now you double it at 6,000, ours is 50. And so the judge says you can double. Well, now we're at 100, that's not.
You didn't even get the gas and the person to take it there.
Right, it's,
Yeah.
so, and I think, and that's where some of that comes in. I'm not advocating for skyrocketing on permit costs, but if we said our building permit or our site permit is $50, but we're gonna charge $5,000 for the fine, the judge's gonna look at that and say, well, you didn't even set the permit for over $100 at 50 or 5,000 is unreasonable.
Well, then maybe
When
we
you
should
started here.
reevaluate our permit fees.
But I still think you need to look at a building inspector, because whoever does it pays them, we're not paying them. You know what I mean?
I can get on board with the building inspector, I'm just not sure I'm on board with adopting the state building code just yet,
We won't get a licensed building official
without that.
And what's the beef with not doing it? I mean, what are we hiding from, I guess?
I don't have to get a building permit every time I do something to my house.
How often do you do something to your house?
I might,
Very often.
still, I put a deck on little steps on my house. You wouldn't believe what I had to go through to get that little steps on the back of my house. And it's actually smaller than the one that I had in there originally. And I was told that if I'd have put a 10 by 10 deck back on my house, I wouldn't have to apply for a building permit. Now, how ridiculous is that? I went from a 10 by 10 to a 4 by 5.
Who said that?
That's the way our ordinance reads.
That's where ordinance reads.
If you were just replacing the deck,
If you're
Well,
replacing the deck,
but now you're going backwards, because now it's not because of the building code, it's because of the ordinance.
I understand
See what I'm
that.
saying?
Yeah, I
It has
understand
nothing to
that.
do with the building inspector or building, that has nothing to do with that. It has something to do with the ordinance, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with the inspector.
and the state building code says the same thing. That's what it is. Exactly. You would have replaced your decking. You can go out and replace 10 boards on your
You're
deck.
doing maintenance.
Yeah, you're doing maintenance. You
Right,
can't
right.
replace your footings without a
Yeah.
permit. Can't
Because you're
take it out.
changing the footprint.
But I can go out and I can put as it sits right now, I can rip my deck out, put a 40 by 12 patio, concrete patio on my backyard. I don't need a permit for that.
That's ordinance, that's not state building.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So
But
you,
it's
so
just,
it's
there's
not
ridiculous,
apples to apples.
there's ridiculousness going on here.
Well, that needs to
Well, the
be
deck,
fixed.
people can fall off of. I guess they can trip on your deck.
I think, I'm looking at it from the point of that, okay, how we adopt the state building code. If I replace my water heater, I gotta pull a permit. If I fix a circuit in my house, I gotta have a permit. I can replace the windows, I gotta have a permit. You see where this is going. Everything's gonna have to have a permit at that point.
And I do a lot of my own work,
Yeah, I
like
do a lot of
replacing
my
the
own.
windows
Yes,
too.
I think, I just don't buy it, I'll be honest. But whatever.
Well, you got a new house that you haven't had to do any
Bull,
maintenance
I'll
on.
say bull crap on that too. If you use that, you're not as smart as I thought. That's the
All
dumbest
right,
thing
all
I've
right,
heard.
we're not gonna resort
just the
to, we're
dumbest
not
thing.
gonna resort to name calling, let's.
Well, let's think about that, let's be serious.
Okay, let's just retract that statement.
Because,
But I still do my own work. Why?
so do I, but that's not the thing though. When you look at, if I'm gonna, just say, I'm gonna come, I don't live in this town, I'm gonna come in. I wanna know if stuff was done correct.
I understand
Right?
that. But you're gonna have an inspection done before you buy the house.
Right,
Or you're gonna say that you
But
want,
either way, how much, it's like, you're acting like this is costing an arm and a leg to have something done correct. Like, I gotta get a permit for this, I gotta get a permit for this. Well, it's not as expensive or difficult as it sounds, right? Because if you have a water softener replaced, chances are the plumber's doing it, right?
maybe,
Chances are he's gotta pull the permit.
what if I do it myself?
Well, then pull the permit. How much is the permit?
How the fuck do I know?
Who says that? You guys said?
And who said that's on that? Is that a legit deal in the building code?
I don't know the building code.
See? So we're jumping off a bridge that we're not even, that's what I'm saying.
So why are we adopting it if we don't know what it looks like?
Because what we have doesn't work.
Who's to say that the building code's gonna fix it?
That's almost like, you know, you gotta pass the bill before you know what's in the bill.
Well, but that's the problem. Nobody looks into it. So what I know about it, I like it. Do I know all the answers? Absolutely not. But I know what we have does not work.
Well, and I'm just saying, if we move to the building code, is it gonna fix it's obviously not gonna fix all our
Nothing
problems.
fixes everything.
But is it gonna create more work, is it gonna create more problems than it's gonna fix? Is what I'm asking.
I don't believe so, but that's not, I don't know.
And maybe-
If you're asking, I don't know.
And maybe what we need to do, and this sounds kind of, I'm gonna say like high schoolish, is maybe we need to have a working session where we sit down with, and everybody takes a chapter out of that building code and they read it and they come back with a book report on it. I know, I'm trying to make light of it, okay? I mean, the tension is way too high here, I'm trying to bring it back.
I get what
trying to
you're saying.
understand.
Yeah.
No, but I have nothing against Pat. I value I like the fiery. It's nothing's, when we walk out, it is what it
It
is.
is what it is, right?
I'm not really worried about that. I get fiery, you get fiery. I'm fine with that. But I just think the system we have does not work. Do
And
I say you do that 100%? I don't know that answer. I don't.
And I think most of us here, I think all of us probably, you agree here that what we currently have is broken. I don't think anybody's gonna
Yeah.
anybody's gonna argue the fact that, you know.
It's just we need to correct it.
How we
It's
gonna- how we
some,
gonna fix
It's how, yeah, right, it's how we're gonna fix it. And I'm very leery, I mean, I'm on the fence. One day, I'm all fired up, like, I'm like you, I'm fired up, I'm like, we're doing this, we're adopting the building code, I'm bringing it up, we're gonna get this thing done. And then I sit down and I think about it, and I go through my own use cases, and I go through Pat's use cases, and then I start thinking about it, I'm like, well, yeah, you know, what's the ramifications of going down that path? What are we buying ourselves into? And it's actually obvious, none of us know. And I think before we really get down that route, I think we need to know what we're about to do.
and see what I can appreciate about Pat, is he gets fired up. Why? Because you care about it, right? I care about it too. We're after the same thing, it's just how are we gonna get to it?
Right.
Because we both know the system's broke. So not disrespecting Pat, that's not, so if I apologize. That's not, I care about this community, I wanna see it grow. What we have does not work.
Right.
And it just, I'm to that breaking point as a taxpayer, looking at things going on, and it just drives me nuts.
I just don't wanna punish the people that are doing things the right way,
I
because it's the
understand.
4 people that are doing things the wrong way.
I get that,
I
100%.
thought, if I can interject, I find it interesting that the two people who do their own work think that the new guy buying your house gets an inspection that's gonna find your electrical. No inspector comes into a new home and cuts open the walls to find out if the electrical.
But
Box,
yeah.
they look for a sticker, but mine doesn't have a sticker on, and no stickers on my box, I'm going to look. After our discussion,
Yeah.
like, what is there one, there's not one on there. So, you can say, that I should have gotten an inspection, I knew it was a foreclosure, I knew about the builder, because I have experience with the builder, but, it wouldn't have told me whether or not the wiring was working. I bought it in January, it wouldn't have told me whether the pipes were frozen for the inflow heating. So, because it wouldn't have turned on, well, it's not me, it don't work. So, you know, we can throw it out there that you young people are gonna have inspections on homes, and they don't. And, you know, some people, you know, do good work when they do their own work. You know, and others don't,
Mhm.
so, I get the pros and cons.
Well, I get the pros and cons, I get the pros and cons too, I'm just trying to figure out, I just wanna make sure that if we go down that road, there are more pros than there are cons. Not that we're setting ourselves backwards because we're mad at 4 people in town.
And I'll put it bluntly like this, you know, whatever happens, I mean, it's not gonna be, nobody's gonna, you know, not everybody's gonna be happy walking away from it. There's gonna be people like, you know, like me and Pat that do a lot of our own work, you know, that, yeah, we're gonna, you know, things change, we're gonna have to do things differently. You know, likewise with the, you know, people that were, you know, wanted, you know, go the route of, you know, building codes that, you know, hey, you know, well, we gotta allow some stuff to go through that's not gonna be, you know, the simple improvements, at least in my opinion, that people can do that isn't going to cost them, you know, you know, to get the permit, to get, you know, to do the project shouldn't cost more than the actual project. That's where I'm at, is if I do something to my house and it's gonna cost me more to do it, just to get the permit than the actual cost of the material to get things lined up, that's a problem. That's something we need to be aware of.
Where I'm going with it is not the route that you're going with it, though. I think that's kind of the difference. I'm looking at more structural, like what's coming in, like I'm not thinking of a water heater. I guess that's the difference where, but it incorporates it.
Yeah, but if you
Do we know
remember.
for sure that's changing of water heaters in the building code?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know.
Is
that.
it?
Yeah, and and you know, we looked at this a couple of years ago when we first started even bringing up about adopting the state building code. That was one of the things, is you replace a water heater, air conditioner, heating elements, HVAC, windows, doors, anything like that, you're gonna, it's in the state building code, and you're gonna have to pull a permit. I changed the screen door on my house, I'm gonna have to, I don't know, we have to figure this out for sure, but the way I've been interpreting it, if I change the screen door on my house, I gotta come down here to City Hall and pull a permit.
And to me, that's ridiculous, because it's maintenance. But I don't know, that's what I'm saying.
Then what we're doing is then what we're adopting is no better than what we've got right now.
Right, we don't have anything, we don't have any ramification. That's the biggest thing.
Because then at that point, all we're doing is we're just punishing the people that follow the rules.
You're not gaining anything if you do that route without changing the fee schedule, you know what I'm saying? That's more, I get what you're saying, and I understand that, because and I do understand but I don't know what.
Yeah, it's just, we just don't need to go into this guns blazing and just carte blanche, okay, this is what we're doing.
No, and
We need to be very.
Well, you certainly haven't gone in gun
You almost can't use that after Janelle's.
Bad choice of words.
It's been quite a few years, so we're
Yeah.
just starting to gallop, I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking more at like what's going on in town, how that can help a lot of that. I'm not thinking what you guys are referencing.
But I agree with you about the whole point of no more homes being moved in. But you gotta also be careful with that too, is that's gotta be worded a certain way that.
I know that.
If we don't want homes being moved in, but yet we want, people that go to Cirilla Beach and buy a home there and pull it in and put it on a lot. I mean, we've had that happen.
Oh, no, there's a few
so that
beautiful.
Yeah, but we have to be careful, just not just not grouping that all together as one.
I've seen it happen the same with that also, though. That's where I'm going with that.
There are some pretty crappy mobile homes out there that
Yes.
could be moved in.
And that's what
Well,
I'm saying, I'm not,
yeah.
I just, what we got going right now is not. And I'm sure you guys had the same stuff that I had this weekend, I'm pretty sure it was the same phone calls, but,
It was.
yeah. Oh, trust me, because it got pulled up in my yard sideways, they said, can you back off the grass, please, it's still wet, you know?
Well, you know people are fired up and if I get a call.
I was surprised, I heard that, I started laughing, I'm like, why? Well, because he's the guy in charge.
Sorry, I got three other people with me on here. We share.
I just laughed, I thought that was funny, but,
But we're not gonna solve it here tonight anyway.
no,
but
didn't plan
we gotta
on it.
start
It's a
something.
But we
conversation.
do. We need to be very very deliberate and actually start looking into that.
And we've said this how many times?
But
And
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
We
saying,
don't
say it, but we
go
don't
any
move
further.
forward.
and that's what I don't want. I
It's
don't
all
want-
of our,
We're all, it's the same, it's
Yeah.
not, I'm not pointing at one
No.
versus the
no,
other,
we're
all the same.
yeah.
but we gotta get it going and get it worked on and
Yeah.
get it.
What we need to do.
Well, maybe let's have somebody that knows where the state building code is, send a link out and.
Well, I'm thinking, we could go through, we can go through and I'll read that again. I mean, and I'm sure that's riveting material.
I've never seen it.
So,
I've never seen it.
and I'm sure it's probably,
I'm sure it is.
it's like, an inch thick.
I will reach out to them.
Or do you?
There aren't many
Yeah.
building officials left, for one, because the licensing was pretty lengthy. I contacted Meeker County to see who they do, because their building official is doing the inspections on the new apartment who retired. So they're without a building official, Meeker County, interviewed and I'm looking at. But I'll contact the two building officials, ask, would they take on a job if we don't have a building?
Well,
Would they take on a job if we are talking about new construction? Starts the, at least we get something in place, would they take that on? And, because there's no reason you can't read the building code and put it in your
Well,
ordinance.
I'm thinking taking that one step further. If one of those retired or current would be willing to come in and sit down and talk to us about it.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of
All
the
of
Pros
us,
and cons.
all of us have like questions in different areas. I think that would actually be,
Interesting.
I think that would be a good conversation to have.
And it's
And maybe
interesting
that
that you
will-
say that there aren't that many out there, so are we gonna say we're gonna go down this route and all of a sudden there's nobody to do the inspections?
At least we would have some
Well,
answers,
yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're gonna be adopting it right there on the spot, but
No, but I mean,
get the questions answered and then address what you're talking about. It's like, okay, if we go down this route, if the state of Minnesota is losing licensed inspectors, because nobody's renewing, they're retiring, there's nobody new coming in, then we've got that question we gotta answer too. And maybe there's stuff in the state building code that we find out that maybe if we don't go down that road, like, oh, hey, I know Adam's like, don't cherry pick out of the state building code, but maybe there's a few things in there that would help firm up what we have to add the bite that you were talking about. Force things to follow through. Just,
It just needs to be a conversation that started and continued
Can
till
we
we.
put it on for the May 18th?
absolutely. I was just gonna make that recommendation.
Sorry?
Nope, didn't, no problem.
stole this thunder.
That's all right.
Am I supposed to do that? Yeah.
And one little thing I brought up,
Jeez, Dan. No, it's
but
good.
You
we
knew
got
it too, didn't you? I was gonna not say it, and you did.
I did. We
Dan
gotta
dropped
keep it
the
going.
bomb. Yeah,
Okay,
all right.
Are you gonna go over there tonight and tell her you brought it up?
no,
I'm not.
Cindy
We
had,
talked out of draft a letter, that would be the other portion of this, whatever we decide to do, there has to be communication from that department. So if it's a building official or our zoning administrator, there has to be constant communication with projects. There are, I think of the street project and the amount of conversations he had when we had a well-paid engineer, and you still have conversations on a regular basis. That has to happen. You can't go 6 months and then go, they're not done. Now it's winter, now we're gonna go another 6 months. But as things happen, it has to be a constant communication. Whatever way.
All right, at risk of having somebody else drop another bomb.
Cindy did have her hand
Yeah.
up
I did
before.
have
Yeah.
two things.
Okay.
Our ARPA funds, I have to report
Okay,
what we're doing with it. So I will put, we need a new decision, we can just put it all under, revenue expenses. I have to have it in. I have all of it except for the, I have to answer that,
okay,
so if that's okay.
that's fine. Yeah.
And then, yeah. And the apartment building has been too well.
Wow.
Already?
good.
Wow. Oh, that ought to make David really happy.
We had 3 for unit 8.
3 people on a, it must be a heck of a unit.
But I know, it's only because I know the person's on it. Yeah, so
Almost had a
that's
bidding war on unit 8.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah, wow, he's not charging enough then, huh?
That's what I thought.
Oh, good for him. So, yeah, no, I had a conversation with him, and to make this real quick, because he was like, if he can get those units rented out within 60, I think he told me like 60 days, he would start working on phase 2. So if we already got 12, already got 12 rented out, that might.
Fudge your number or two, couldn't you? Make it look good.
All right.
Take some people out of town in. I'll take it.
All right, folks, next meeting, May 4th, that's a regular council meeting. May 18th, there'll be a nice lively council workshop, so. All right, with that being said, we're out of here. I adjourn.
Didn't say anything.
He wasn't on the agenda.
He came with all his paperwork.